The training I had in ICS, SIMS, and NIMS helped during this activation, especially having to notify our staff that we were going to have a level 2 EOC activation.
You have to be prepared. The worst thing that can happen to you is a disaster happens and you don't have a plan, because when you're nervous, when you're frightened, and you're scared, having a plan and having a practice can make the difference between saving lives and property and also recovery.
The SIMS and NIMS, and especially the ICS, is an outstanding model to use. I think that one person cannot do it all. We need help from the facility side, logistics side. We also need the PAO. We need all these things. You know, when they marry up, it becomes cohesive. And in this particular instance, where we have firestorms that are rampant throughout the county, and you're right in the middle, it's imperative that you establish that ICS, the Incident Command Center. I would have to say that ICS will make it or break it for any type of catastrophic incident.
The ICS, SIMS, and NIMS training was very helpful in that I understood the structure of how things would be organized during the event, during the emergency. So I understood that there would be a JIC somewhere, a Joint Information Center, that would be responsible for coordinating information and sending out information. I understood the role of FEMA and why FEMA was there for a local incident that actually got bigger every day.
One of the things we try and tell our staff is, first of all, think about being personally prepared. Think about your family and your home. If you have children, how are you going to tell them what should they do? Do you have a plan of communication? And what about, bringing enough clothes? As emergency disaster workers, we may have to be here 3 days. So we try and tell people, have supplies in your car, have a plan to your family so that your family is taken care of and that you're here and you can concentrate on the work that you need to do. I found that when you talk about it, it's one thing. To actually be called upon to implement it was quite another. And just the fact that we were gearing up for it, I think we're better prepared for anything that might hit us again.
Our ICS, SIMS, and NIMS trainings absolutely assisted us in being prepared and responding to this emergency, both from being prepared in a paperwork standpoint where we had the processes down and knew what we were going to do, through the practicing of those processes.
Do cross-training, because you never know who's going to be on duty when needed. Also prepare for the fact that if you are there for 12 hours or 24 hours or more, have a plan in place that you're going to be able to rotate your staff, because people will fatigue.
When we worked with other agencies, I could tell who went through training and who didn't. It was very obvious. I think that's one of the things when you bring in a variety of agencies with different focuses, to have a shared language and a shared structure really helps.
One of the most critical things that a CEO can do is to feel comfortable enough that there is a good plan in place, that there are good people in place, and then to stand back and let the operation of the plan take place.
If I had a message to legislators, one of the things I would suggest or request is that we require colleges to practice. That type of legislation will save lives and property in the future.
Suggestion for other colleges would be that everybody on staff at those colleges really get to know who their emergency team is, to who's really involved, who the backups are, who they can call upon, where they're going to be in an emergency. Are they going to be out in the field, or are they going to be in the office?
One lesson we learned is we did track all the employees that came to campus to help out in the situation, all the expenses that we had to incur. For example, we went out and bought just gazillions of masks and things to be able to provide at the local assistance center, and we tracked all of that. One lesson we learned is let's go ahead and set up forms to make that tracking easier.
Not only train, but cross-train. Do not anticipate that the key decision makers on your campus are going to be there. So once again, cross-train.
I think it's important to note that we were not just sending out information to the media. We would write releases or information about the local assistance center and send it straight to the shelters that were set up, because those were not being included in anybody else's media list. So that's how a lot of the victims found out about our services and where we were.
What else that we learned was some basic things. When we anticipated people would come to us and not have their medication, so we found out about a phone number to call to help pharmacies supplied medication. We also found out that people would come with their animals and their pets, and that we needed to deal with that. One of the things that I anticipated was mental health needs. The families would be in crisis. They would come with maybe only the shirt on their back and a lot of emotional issues. So we have a connection with the TIP program, the Trauma Intervention Program. And we also would pair our staff to kind of do a triage. Okay, who needs help? Who needs counseling? And, you know, are you hungry? Do you need something to eat? One of the things we realized is we'd like to get more training from the Red Cross, have more people trained in the care and shelter issue, and also that if we did see trauma or injuries, we'd like more training on how to respond to that.
I would recommend that agencies work better together and hold meetings with the people affected, and make sure that all agencies are there present to actually listen to us.
I think the most important thing to remember in responding to emergencies, because I mentioned I worked in quite a lot of them, is to realize that the people responding to the emergencies many times are also the victims. We had a person from our ornamental horticulture department running a bulldozer to help set up a place where the county was going to replace some classrooms that they were going to need to do disaster response local assistance centers. They were going to build us some classrooms. On one day he was working a bulldozer to set up a place for classrooms. The next morning he's there shaking and crying because his house burned down while he was helping us. Most of us who are working and liaising with the feds and the local county officials at the local assistance center, we're living out of cars, we're in an evacuation center, and so many of the people who are responding to emergencies are also victims. And that influences emotions, that influences behavior, that influences dynamics, it influences communication, and I think people need to be aware of that.
The video we have just seen reminds us of how important our emergency planning and preparedness activities are. I urge you to listen to the advice of these leaders and first responders who have just faced the actual breath of the dragon, a real disaster, and heed their sage advice. Ask yourself, are we really ready for the worst case scenario? And if not, what must we do to be ready? The Disaster-Resistant California Community Colleges program has for the first time brought together all 109 community colleges to share common resources and focus on emergency management and best practices. With this effort, not only will we establish models of best practices on our campuses, but we will demonstrate that readiness can be accomplished cost-effectively, and the California Community Colleges can serve as a model for the rest of the nation. We invite you to actively participate in your Disaster-Resistant California Community Colleges Regional Mutual Aid Group and attend the targeted emergency management trainings that will be offered to help you become proficient and compliant with state and federal requirements. Thanks to all of our community colleges, and a special thanks to our partner agencies and state and regional task force members. We look forward to an exciting and effective Disaster-Resistant California Community Colleges program in 2008 and beyond.
California colleges and universities are a major segment of our state's critical infrastructure. The protection of this vast array of physical assets and resources, but more importantly, the protection of the millions of people who work and study on our campuses in the event of a natural or man-made disaster is our prime responsibility. The Office of Homeland Security is pleased to be partnering with the California Community Colleges in the development and implementation of a comprehensive disaster preparedness program. Working together, we can keep our campuses learning environments that are safe and secure for all of our faculty, staff, and students.
All of us need to be prepared, each and every one of us, to prevent, to respond, and to recover from disastrous or catastrophic events. Thank you.
Well, during any disaster, it always brings out the best and the worst in people, and I am happy to say that it really brought out the best in our staff here. As an emergency manager, I could say that my emotions were exhilaration, because your adrenaline's running and you are moving faster than you ever thought you could, but at the same time, incredible mental fatigue, because you are not moving at a normal pace, and you are not just dealing in a linear process. You're dealing with multiple campuses, you're dealing with your county, you're dealing with your state representatives, and it's almost like learning a foreign language and getting thrown into a country and having to speak it all at one time.